Here we go. Hello, all. Welcome to the Fantasy and Sci-Fi Fanatics podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Coolbaugh, and I have with me today a very special guest, Mark. Mark, how are you today?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you for having me
Excellent.
back.
Yeah, of course. This is Mark's third episode in a row. We had way too much to talk about the first couple times, so we decided that we were going to break it up. And actually, we were going to do two, and then our second one got cut off. So you guys probably saw that hopefully before this one. So this is kind of going to be, we talked a little bit in between. So this is kind of going to be an ending to Mark's first episode with us. But really, we kind of had a couple of new things and topics to bring up. So we figured instead of just trying to cram in a few minutes and edit it together, we would actually just do an entirely different third session. So Mark, thanks again for coming back and talking to us some more.
It's a pleasure.
So, all
Absolute
right.
pleasure.
So you and I talked a little bit like we always talk about to warm up, but I'm really interested for you to share with everybody what those 30-minute writing sprints were like for you for draft one of The Blood of the Spear.
Right. Yeah. So for my first draft, I found that, well, I was traveling for work. I'd work in the city. I live on Sydney's northern beaches, and having to get to the city is about, by car, it's 30 to 45 minutes, but traveling on public transport takes a lot longer, and I don't like buses. So I was taking the Manly ferry across Sydney Harbour to the city every morning, and that's a half-hour trip either way, there and back again. So an hour all a round trip all day.
I like the Lord of the Rings plug though.
Bookmarked my day. So in that time frame, I had 30 minutes with nothing to do. I could read, or I could pull out the laptop and write. So I decided, I want to write. to get a book out, you have to write. So I decided
that's true.
Yeah, that is, very much so. I wish you could just pull it all out of your head.
Yeah.
And be done, but no, you actually have to put in the work.
I think we said that episode 1 too before we actually got on the air. Yeah. It is just as true as it was 2 weeks ago. So
absolutely, yeah, it is very much one of those wishes. I would, if I had 3 wishes, that would be one of them, I think.
Amen.
All the stories I have in my head, put them out into a Word document for me. Okay, so I just started going, and that was a half-hour trip. So I would also arrive at work a bit early, and I found that I had another half hour that I could get more writing done. So I did a half hour then. I managed to sneak in a half hour at lunchtime. I got a half hour on the ferry trip home, and then I'd do a half hour after dinner of a night. And once I got into the flow of it, I was finding that I was getting an entire page. I wasn't counting words at that stage. Didn't know enough about, writing, that it's not pages that authors count, its words. But I worked out that I was doing a Word document page in that half-hour sprint, and I was getting 5 pages a day done. And my chapters, I was kind of aiming with no real guide to it, just a feel of how the story was flowing and where I was directing it, that I would round chapters up at the 15-page mark. So I was finding that my chapters, as I was counting, I had a little whole calendar on my back wall that I would cross off each day when I do certain things, and I'd be marking what chapters I'd gotten to, and I could just see all of this filling up. This was really noticeable. My momentum in terms of getting work done was increasing, and it became a habit. It was like, well, the ferry, I sit on the ferry, I open up and I just go. When I first started, it would take me a while to get into it, but then once it became something I did, and because I actually took that to my weekends as well, but instead of doing it in half-hour, well, I still did it in half-hour bursts, but I did it first thing in the morning, and I'd write for 30 minutes, get up, walk around, sit down again, write for another 30, and I'd do that for 2.5 hours every morning on Saturday and Sunday, just to keep that momentum going. And I found that really effective for me in my first draft phase. I never did any editing And in fact, I tried not to second guess myself too much. If I came across, introduction of a new character and I didn't have a name for them, or it was the name or dragon or something, and then needed to have a really powerful, different type of name, and I didn't spend 10 minutes sitting there trying to work out matching syllables together to come up with something good. I just put like XXXXX and move on to the next one. So like when I came back to edit, I know, I need a name there. I would start by reading the last paragraph that I'd finished in my previous session. I'd just reread that to get, this is where I'm at, and bang, I was back into it straight away. It was actually it became quite seamless for me. So I'm actually looking to get back into that for writing the draft of book 2. That worked really well. I noticed because in the rewrites of book 1, new content did get created, did get added. And I found that while I wrote the first draft sequentially, and I'd write description, and then I'd write dialogue and have dialogue tags and more description and move the scene through like that, I found when I was writing new scenes or even an entirely new chapter, I would pull out a notepad on my computer and I would just write dialogue without any tags. I just like, one person said something, space, next person said something. So almost like a script, I guess, in some ways, not that I know anything about script writing. And then I would pull all that dialogue and I would whack it onto a Word document. And then I'd start putting in punctuation, I'd put in dialogue tags, and then I would start building descriptors and stuff around it. And I found that worked a lot better for me in terms of, I don't know, getting authentic dialogue down. Somehow between the time I'd written my first draft and the time I was doing new stuff in the edits of later drafts of book 1, I felt like I'd forgotten how to get into the flow of writing dialogue well, and doing it that way, it became really easy. And in fact, I got an entirely new chapter done with over the course of a weekend.
Oh wow.
Where previously it would have taken me about 3 or 4 days.
Yeah.
So and that was all just like, put all the dialogue, everything I wanted to say, follow the backwards and forwards between the characters. It just flowed a lot more for me. Whacked it down afterwards and then filled in the gaps. That worked really well. So I don't know that I'll do that in the next draft. Maybe in parts, maybe when I have big scenes, dialogue heavy scenes, I might do that. But we'll see how we go. But yeah, that was really interesting. There's just such a different mindset between writing a first draft and then writing later in the editing phase, even when you're adding new material. It was different for me.
I just liked how we were talking about that earlier, because like I was saying, like I was doing the 15-minute sprints last year, coming home from school, didn't have a lot to do. So like, especially on Friday, and my wife and I were very tired from teaching. So I'd be tired, but then I'd be resting, and then I'd be like, okay, I'm ready to do something. So, like I was saying, like I would get on Discord. There was this writers channel that, I think it was C.S. Radcliffe actually invited me to. So Corey invited me to it. So I met a couple of cool people on there.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so I would just get home, I'd go work out, we'd go to dinner or something, we'd come back. My wife would be, ready to chill or whatever, or go to sleep. So I would literally just get on and I'd start be like, okay, who's on tonight? And there'd always be one of these 3 people. And one guy and I in particular, literally just 15 minutes, take a 5-minute break, and we try to beat each other. But really it was just helpful having somebody just to, be like, hey, sprint with me. It's just like, just like having a running partner. I don't really like running unless it's for competition or a ball is involved or a score. I can play basketball all day, but it's hard just to run by myself. So I definitely think I agree with you. I'm trying to also, the next couple of weeks, get back into those types of routines, because I do feel like you were right. Like forming habits is really good. And it's hard for us, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Particularly writers.
Yeah, a lot of my time when I'm not in the habit is it's ridiculous because like I have the ideas and I've done an entire book and it's published and I know I can do it. But whenever I go to start something, it's what I've come to know is the fear of starting.
Mm. I know
Once
it
I've
well.
started, it's fine.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I can sit there and just procrastinate and distract myself and not get around to do it. And I've run out of time now. I have to go and do something else.
Yeah, yeah.
So once I've got a habit going, the habit for me just takes over. It's like, well, no, this is what we do at this time. And it's like, right. So then it's hard to break the habit. Or if somebody wants me to change, I'm like, no, I can't. This is when I do my habit. It's almost like in some ways, the half-hour burst works really well for me as well, because I wasn't committing myself to an entire day of writing. So I'm committing myself to 30 minutes.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
if I can get my 5 pages done on weekends within the first 2.5 hours of the morning, I'd get myself up early. Then I had the rest of the day to do whatever I wanted. I could play Warcraft, I could read, I could veg out in front of the television, whatever. I didn't have to write because all my writing's already been done. And as long as I got that quota of 5 pages done, it didn't matter what my word count was.
Yeah,
It didn't
yeah.
even have to be amazing writing because it was first draft. It just had to be done. And once I'd done that, I was free to do whatever else I wanted. So now it's a matter of getting that muscle working again for a first draft and getting back into it.
Yeah. I think you make a great point too. I just thought like I feel the same exact way, but like I was saying earlier, like now mine's just doing some sort of editing and I haven't done it before and I
Mhm.
really enjoy being in the thick of it. Like I enjoy starting an idea and I actually
Yeah.
even now enjoy trying to get, another book to,
Mm.
finished or whatever that draft.
Yeah.
So I feel like I'm almost now addicted to try and getting another draft of something else done, but now I
Yeah.
need to make myself addicted to the editing
Yeah.
and I need to form
Yeah. Well,
habits on the editing.
I actually, when I was doing my editing, I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. That's why it took me so long. It took me
Yeah.
like 6 or 7 years to get to the final draft. I was just rereading it and I was tweaking sentences and I was changing words and thinking I was editing. That wasn't editing. That was just moving words around on the page. It wasn't until I started. I'd give it to my editor and would get feedback and things would be highlighted and pointed out and I was getting specific uh, tips and tricks from her to look at, that I actually started really making progress in the shaping and reshaping of the story up until my final edit. My final edit, which was meant to be a copy edit, also became a bit of a developmental edit because I worked with a different editor for that to the editor who'd worked with me from manuscript that we have in Australia. I think it's a bit different in America. I think they call them developmental edits, where they had a manuscript assessment and then a structural edit. And it got to the point where she was a little bit too close to the story as well and didn't see some particular weaknesses. And when I went to my copy editor, she read the whole thing first with an eye to development or structure and came back with like, okay, look, these are some things that I think are an issue. And while I can just go through and do a copy edit for you, I think I'd be, doing you a disservice to just do that. So she had only charged me for a copy edit, yet she did a
Mm.
whole heap of other work with me as well. And we restructured the first 10 chapters. I think we cut them down to about 5, maybe 7 chapters, that sequence anyway, and reworked a whole heap of things to make the book stronger / better. Um, and it was when I was working with editors and looking at this sort of sort of things that they were pointing out to me. It became was I started going, oh, okay, so my toolbox in what I need to look at for myself when I go to edit a draft, I don't have to wait for an editor to start showing these things to me. I can go, oh, let's look for this. Let's look for, characterization. Let's look for the ebb and flow of the story. Let's look for breaking down or even storyboarding chapters and seeing how they flow and how they fit together. And, you know, is every chapter necessary? Is this just filler? You know, how does it affect the story? How will it affect the story if I take it out? You know, if there's no effect to the story and I've taken it out, well, does it actually need to be there? You know, so, and you don't need to, it's that whole thing about like, okay, somebody leaves the room, but you don't have to talk about them crossing the floor and opening the door and closing it behind them. You know, you don't need to talk about every single step. And just working out how to paint a scene that leaves it to the reader's imagination to fill in the gaps, which also makes it more personal for the reader, I think, with their coloration of what they're reading. So there are lots of things learned that I will hopefully put into practice next time round.
Definitely know that feeling too.
Yeah, not that I am not going to go to my editors again. I will be going to both of them at different stages of the editing process. But yeah, I just feel as a writer, my skill set has increased, so that's a good thing.
My friend said a similar thing the other day when we were talking to her, and she said, I feel like I went to Lowe's and bought more tools.
Yeah.
You know, like, or I had to buy a
Yeah.
bigger toolbox, and then, you know, I had more tools and something of that nature. And I just thought, oh, that's a really good
It is.
point.
It's true.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's like it's my toolbox. All of a sudden, I've got all these tools in there. I actually know how to use them.
Yeah.
You know?
Instead of just being in there and just sitting in the cabinet. That's funny. I guess we could go either way here. I guess really, like, when you were talking to me about your editing process, can you try and just I really like how you mentioned that you talked about writing in different places. Can you just touch on that again for our
Sure.
audience? Because I thought that was really, really a good point that I hadn't really thought of, but I had heard before. So
yeah, so it was one of the things that has been I have heard from other writers that writing different parts of your story or different stages, different drafts, puts you in a different mindset. So, and I think Brandon Sanderson talks about writing on different chairs throughout the house.
Yep.
My first draft was written on laptop only. I found, because this was written a number of years ago, and I didn't have internet access on my laptop, so I didn't have the distraction of looking online for things, or getting, you know, email notifications or messenger chats or whatever. So my first draft was written on the laptop, on the ferry, at the office at work, and in the lounge room at home. Once I went from writing to editing, I was like, oh, I can't edit on a laptop. The screen's too small. I need to see the whole picture of the page I'm working on, all this sort of stuff. So I printed it out onto paper and went through it with a red pen. And then started putting the red pen edits onto the Word document, because I use Word. I don't use Scrivener. At the time, Scrivener, I don't believe, was available for Word when I started writing. And now it is. I'm kind of like, I had no problem writing an entire manuscript, a 200. In fact, the first iteration of my novel was something like 215,000 words long. So, and my Word document was fine for that. So I don't know. I don't see a reason for me to change.
A lot of people have gone from different things to go back to just Word. Word seems to be the collective.
I know Word's not the big argument is that Word is not designed to deal with documents of that type of size. That's epic fantasy can get to. But it worked just fine for me. I had other documents that I had my glossary in, and I had Excel spreadsheets for character lists and all this sort of stuff.
Well, some people just break it up even in like chapters or parts of the book, you know.
My book, so my manuscript is set of chapters, and each chapter has a heading, and then I've got the chapters that are on down the side, and I can just click on a chapter and it'll take me straight to it. So I always know where I'm at. So I always I had that, and I think in modern Word you can actually drag those chapters around. It'll actually change the text on the document as well.
Oh, that's cool.
So which I think is one of the big things that Scrivener does as well. It does it in files, and you just
Yeah,
rearrange your
yeah.
files. But anyway, so that worked for me. And I printed it out and I started doing all my red penning, and then I'd sit in front of my computer. I'd have everything, the printed out document in front of me, and was looking at that and typing the changes in. And that's just so time consuming.
Yeah.
And then I started working with my editor, and she'd send me back the Word document and had comments and track changes on, and I just accepted or rejected or whatever. And once I started working through that, all those edits directly in the manuscript, I was like, I'm never printing this out again. I can do it all digitally. So, and that's how I did it. It was all done digitally after that. And that was from my third or fourth draft on. I've never printed it out to do the whole thing. And that's the other thing they say as well. If you want to do so then once I was doing my drafts, my editing, I was doing it not on my laptop, but on my desktop. And I was only doing it at certain times of day. I wasn't doing the constant half an hour on the ferry, half an hour at work, all that. I was using that time now to read and doing the editing when I was at home. The other thing they do, I wrote my first draft in Courier New Font. And when I did my edits, I changed it to Times New Roman. And that sort of change makes the words look different. So it helps your brain shift gears between the different stages of your writing. Printing it out and going and sitting and reading it in some place that you've never looked at it before also changes your experience of reading it. Printing it out and reading it aloud changes, because if you're actually reading, your brain will do this thing. I gave it to my dad to read, and he highlighted a whole heap of stuff for me, as you know, of changes, not changes, but like typos and things. And he highlighted an entire sentence. I looked at the sentence and I couldn't for the life of me see what was wrong with it. And I went to him, I'm like, why has this been highlighted? What's wrong with it? And he got, was like, he looked at it and he's like, well, read it. Read what the sentence says. And I pulled it back from him and I started reading it. I started reading it out loud. And as soon as I started reading it out loud, I realized that I had put the words in the wrong order on the page. My brain kept putting them in the right order when I read it. But if you actually read it out loud, you're looking at what words are in front of you to say aloud rather than to just internalize. And that was like, oh, okay. But I find that I can't read my entire manuscript to myself. So I've got the most recent versions of Word. I think it's Word 360 or Office 360. Word comes with a text-to-speech function. And you can
I
highlight
remember you said that
passages.
last week we were talking.
Yeah. And I just highlight a passage and I set it to go, and it starts. You could choose if you wanted a female voice or a male voice. And while there is some robotic characteristic to it as well, I think they've done a lot of work in how it uses the inflections of punctuation. And so it starts reading things to me, and I'll be like, oh my God, that's a really long sentence. We need to break that sentence up, or we need to put some punctuation in, because it's just like going on and on and on. It's like, can take your breath. So that was really good as well. And it will read what's actually on the page to you. So if you've not got a word that your brain keeps putting in every time you look at the page, then it's going to pick that up for you too. So those sorts of changes are really beneficial in tricking your brain into looking at it differently. So that's how I work. I'm starting this new draft and I'm doing it in front of my computer rather than on my laptop. So we'll see how it goes. I had to go and buy a new laptop because my last one just died. So
I remember you said
it works, but the battery is completely gone, and it's really old. So I could have gotten a new battery, but it has, hey, I just gave it to my niece and nephew and told them they have to use it plugged in, and I got myself a new one.
That's always when you know you need a new laptop. I feel like when you can't just walk around with it plugged in. It's funny that you said that with I forgot you said that last week when you and I talked about just stuff in general, about the Microsoft Word reading it to you. I realized that I had a conversation with a friend of mine a while back, and she said that she actually gives it to like her husband to read or somebody else, like one of her coworkers even who was interested, and she records them. And then they record themselves like over Zoom and then they send it to her, like the audio, like
Right.
the MP3 or whatever, 4 or whatever. And
Yep.
I thought that was interesting because she said that she goes, she was doing the same thing you did with the sentences and she wasn't understanding. And she said, even like hearing it in someone else's voice,
Mm.
especially like helped out loud. And I thought that was a very interesting idea because
Yeah.
I had never heard of anybody doing that before.
Mm.
Um,
You need to
but
have
yeah,
a
it was
really good
interesting.
friend prepared to do that, or
Yeah, yeah.
support his spouse.
Yeah, well, she had a lot of people. I think
With
she ended up having like 8 different people because, like, she wrote epic
wow.
fantasy as well, and she
Yeah.
just said, "Hey, here's a chapter. Can you just read this
Oh,
and
okay.
send
A
it to me?"
chapter at a time.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
a chapter at a time. So, like,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think at first it was like, her husband was doing it, and then it was like, I know he got busy for sure. So then
Mm.
she brought like her sister in. It was just like all of a sudden,
Mm.
like, eventually by the time she was done,
Yeah.
she had like 7 different people, and she put them in, like the forward and stuff. But I mean, I just thought that was interesting because she's like, yeah, like hearing it out loud with someone else's voice, really helped me. And I'm like, well, my thing is I hear my characters in my head. And if your voice isn't like my character, I feel like it'll pull me out.
Mm.
But it was a very interesting tool.
No.
So
Yeah. I found that it doesn't, especially given that I've taken now to listening to audiobooks a lot.
yeah.
I'm used to narrators putting their own spin or characters sounding different to how they sound in my head. So, it ended up being more listening to the words that are being related to you. And, you know, to a degree, it felt like some of the dialogue was being delivered the way I wanted it to. I could sense the emotion behind it. Um, Writing epic fantasy, you'll end up putting names and words in there, or places or languages that you create that the Microsoft has no idea how they're pronounced, and they just start spelling it to you when they get to it. And it's like, what?
That'd
Oh,
probably
they
be
don't
half
know
my
how to
first
say
book.
that. Yeah, they don't know how to say that one, so that's
Yeah.
fine. But I was less concerned about names and places and more about, do we need punctuation here? Does this sentence actually work the way it's meant to work? Have I missed words? Have I put them in the right order? That was really important,
Yeah, I
and it
think
was good
that's,
for it.
yeah. I just feel like that's a really valuable tool to have. And we used to do that for Korean for Google Translate,
Mm.
just to make sure, certain phrases were right in English or certain phrases were right in Korean. And, if it wasn't right, didn't sound right, we would just look back over the translation and try again. So I think that's a great tool. I feel like
Yep.
it works really well.
Yeah. Yeah, it did for me. It'll certainly be something that I use again for the next draft of
Yeah.
this one when I get to that far.
I'm definitely gonna try it. I'm definitely gonna try it.
Yeah.
Once I get to that step, maybe like on the next
Yeah.
try. I do like how you though mentioned the audiobooks, and you and I had talked a little bit about this. Well, actually, quite a bit about this before we started filming,
Mm.
just about different audiobooks. So we got about 10 minutes for the Spotify version. Cuts out for time, but
Yep.
just as like a follow up, so let's just we can just talk to the audience real quick. So we were talking about different audiobooks, and I was mentioning how one I'm listening to, I love the book, I love the series. um, the narrator that I got, I just felt didn't quite do it for me, and I feel like
Mhm.
if I'm, like I told you, Mark, like if I take a break this weekend, come back Monday, start listening to it again, I feel like it's going to pull me out of the book. So, how do
Yeah.
you feel about help audiobooks, narrators, helps or hurts?
Yeah. It depends on the narrator, really, at the end of the day.
Because
And
you said you found a really
um,
good one, right?
oh yeah, I did. So I had picked up, and I'm happy to talk about this, Melissa Mcphail's novels, and she writes in omniscient narration. And I found in my own process of writing that I wrote originally in omniscient narration and was pulled up by some of my by my editor that I was doing a lot of telling rather than showing. And in an effort to reduce that, I changed in a subsequent draft. I changed from omniscient to tight third person. And now I'm like constantly, when I come across books that are written in omniscient narration, my red pen in my head just starts going. I get knocked out of it straight away. And so I really, really wanted to get into these books because they just sounded like everything I really enjoyed. And I found it really difficult to do it. So I gave the audiobook a go. And the audiobook is narrated by Mcphail. And it
Oh,
was just amazing. It was so good. So I can listen to omniscient narration when it's being spoken to me or narrated, but I can't. I find it difficult to read. And once I got into those books with him narrating them, she's in my top 5 favorite authors now. So he does an amazing job. I think the narrator makes all the difference. I've come across some narrators who there's this thing where they will lower their voice when they're talking. So then when they need to put a really strongly emphasized thing or make it sound like they're shouting, they're not actually shouting into the microphone. And if they're doing it like that, I'm like, I can tell instantly what they're doing and why they're doing it. And I feel like, can you stop whispering at me or in my ear? I often stop listening to the book. I just can't do it. And
no, I understand that.
we'll do a return. Can I have my credit back? I'll try something else. The other person that I came across who did something like that is not something like that, whose work I was not able to get into reading the words of, was Peter F. Hamilton. And then I picked up the Commonwealth Saga, which was narrated by John Lee.
Oh yeah,
And John Lee did this
amazing.
most amazing job. And Hamilton is now one of my favorite writers as well. And in
Oh,
fact,
wow.
his most recent books, I was even able to go in and just read before the audio was available. I don't know, it's something about the way the narrator has found the rhythm of the work or the writing that my brain wasn't picking up. And it then having that performed for me has changed the way I interact with the physical words that my brain does. So yeah, the narrators are hit or miss. There are some narrators that I just know. I was like, no, I can't touch you. I just can't go to the stuff, unfortunately. And there was one really big series that I love the books of, and I wanted to listen to the audio to them as audio because I spend a lot of time driving now, and I didn't have the time to read them. This is the series that you're reading currently or listening to. And I just couldn't do it. The narrator is not performing the story.
No, not at
Um,
all.
and while I don't feel a narrator needs to change their voice for different characters all the time. So the narrators who do, some people find it really awkward listening to it. It's like, oh, you're obviously putting on a female voice there. It doesn't work. I think if you've fallen into the story with them and you've fallen into the being told the story, after a while, you kind of don't even notice those things. It becomes part of the flavor, for me anyway. And Nick Padell does it really well. Kate Redding is
Oh
amazing.
yeah, yeah.
When I first listened to Wheel of Time on audio, it's the Eye of the World starts off with Michael Kramer, and I found Michael Kramer to be very dry and almost monotone in his delivery at first. I don't know if it was a matter of him warming up or me warming up to his reading style. But after a while, it's like they're up there with my favorite narrators as well. They
Oh
just do a
yeah.
fantastic job. Um, and I'd listen to Kate Redding read anything. I think she's just brilliant.
Oh yeah. I do
So
have to say I did prefer her, like her
yeah,
parts far more.
yeah.
And at first I didn't. I don't know what it was though. I don't know if it was my buddy and I talked about that. We don't know if it was like the parts of the book that they read
Mm.
or what it was. Like for me, they completely flip-flopped and I just thought, you know, she ended up
So
having, I guess
Michael would read all the chapters that had a male POV,
yeah, yeah. And
a male
I think
POV,
that's
and
what
she
it
would do the
was.
female.
I
Yeah,
think she added, because I don't know. I guess I don't understand. I like strong female characters. Like I
yeah,
thought Brie Larson did an amazing job for Captain Marvel. I really enjoyed it.
mm,
Um,
yeah,
and I guess I just always see my mom. So my mom's a very strong woman. So I don't mind that. I actually prefer that because otherwise I feel like
mm,
they're fake. And
yeah,
there are certain characters that are going to be different in terms of their types of strengths and things like that, and that goes for women too. But I just felt like she really added emphasis to those, characters. And for me, that made the books more complete than when
Yep.
I read them the first time. And I felt like it definitely added to my reading experience. And it actually got me more excited to read book six, um, just from her side of the narrating. So I definitely
Yeah.
agree with you there.
Yeah. So it's all down to the narrator. If I come across a narrator I haven't heard before, I'll give them a listen to the sample to see how I feel. It's like, are we gonna gel okay? Um,
It really is, because you're
and
you're in it for the
yeah,
long haul, especially if
yeah,
you're, reading something like Brandon Sanderson, like, or even half of that. I
yeah,
mean, even like the current series, like I was saying that I'm trying to reread but listen to audio, that's 10 hours, right? That 8 to 10 hours every
yeah.
book. It's like, and it's kind of a big deal too, because like, no offense to anybody, I can't really,
Mm,
like, I'm trying to pick books on, Audible for people that I really like, who, like Kevin Hearn's one of those guys that has personally
mm,
helped me out in the past, on numerous occasions. And I wanted to buy his books to help
yeah.
him out, but I just really enjoyed them. And I forget who the narrator is, but if you guys haven't listened to or read or listened to the Iron Druid Chronicles, highly recommended by Kevin Hearn. But I like Kevin's writing's amazing. It's one of my favorite urban fantasy series. But man, that narrator he found just nailed Atticus, the main character, and it just added to the experience of reading his books. And now I'm actually waiting for my buddy. At some point, we're gonna book club the whole series from start to finish.
Oh,
Um,
cool.
yeah, they're really, really good.
Mm. I'll have to get into those.
Oh,
Haven't read them yet.
I'm
Yeah.
really trying to get you into them. The thing is like they are very. It's like Jim Butcher or Mercy Thompson. Like some people, they're just or Kim Harrison. Like some people are very particular about urban fantasy. I like the Eric Carter series. You know, um, I just feel like like it's like we talked about earlier. Like everybody
Yeah.
likes different things, and it's kind of like wine, right? Everybody likes maybe
Yeah.
sweeter or red or white or cold or warm. Things like that.
Mm,
And yeah, I don't know. I really enjoyed them though. I thought they were brilliant. My buddy's trying to get me onto the Kim Harrisons. He gave me the first two, I think. He lent me. So as soon as I knock some indie publishing
cool.
and
Yeah.
books down, I'll be trying to do those.
God, I
But,
used to sell so many of those when I worked in the bookshop.
oh, I can
We had this
imagine.
entire wall. They were all in the paranormal romance wall,
Yeah, yeah.
all those ones. And we just sold so many of them.
Oh, that's good to
So
hear.
many of them.
I
Yeah.
wish I had known that earlier. I would have, like, I don't know, like urban fantasy for me is still like a new love, I guess, so to speak. Like
Mm,
I feel like I was living in Phoenix at the time and going around Scottsdale and Tempe with my wife, and those are areas where Kevin Hearn wrote, where the main character lives. So
mhm.
like we would pass by a restaurant that was in the story, right,
Oh,
in the
that's cool.
books. Yeah, and it was
Yeah.
just like it was super cool. Or I'd be like, oh, I just read about this place, like this park. We have to go there now. So I mean,
Yeah.
I literally like lived his books,
Yeah.
And then we were a couple places in like New Mexico and Nevada and stuff. We just happened to go by. So I'm like, oh, I know where that's at from these books. So it was like a thing. The three of us, my old roommate, my wife, and I would do. They would be like, okay, is there anywhere, around here, and that are from the books? And we would
Mm,
go, and I'd take a picture and put on Instagram, and
yeah.
it was really cool. So yeah, I highly recommend them. They're really good.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. That would be a fun thing to do. It's
Yeah.
like a tourist map. Yeah.
Oh, it was really fun. I thought about it too. Like one of my friends, we talked about that. Like, so my YA that I just kind of did just for like just a fun thing, just to see if I liked it at all. I took this like a descendant from King Arthur, and I took her and I put her at Cornell University right down the road from us.
Yeah.
And I went to Cornell during the pandemic, and nobody was there. And I went and walked the streets and walked on campus how my
Mm,
character would walk and go to her different classes. And I figured out through different forums and maps and things online what classes she would take,
yeah.
where. And I actually, like, if you would actually be at the campus, and if you were an English major, you would actually have her schedule or
Yeah. Yeah.
the same
Yeah.
professors. Like it was kind of cool. And I was like, oh, it was just kind of like a neat little writing exercise.
Yeah.
But I've seen people do that in the past, and I really like that. So I thought maybe to do that in the future. It was really fun. I could see why they do it.
Yeah, for sure.
I just want to finish up here, Mark, with that last thing we talked about. I just thought no one had ever said this to me. I had thought about it myself doing it, but I've never tried it. So you were talking about your writing music. If you don't mind sharing it with us, so what
Yeah,
kind of music did you listen to while you're writing? I think that would be really interesting.
sure. So majority of the time when I write, I don't listen to anything at all. It's just like not room noise, silent. But writing on the ferry would become problematic, especially in the afternoons. And if it was school holidays, it would be a lot of kids, a lot of chat going on. The ferries in the afternoon would get very full. And I would just plug myself into my headset and I would listen to orchestral music. So I can't listen to music that has lyrics. The lyrics would distract me. But what I wanted to do was to drown out the voices all around me. And being a big gamer, I would pick up audio soundtracks. So, like, I listened to a lot of the Burning Crusade, Warcraft Burning Crusade soundtrack when I was writing, for no other reason than to have it running in the background to drown out the other noise. But I was saying to you is that I do know there are some writers who will listen to particular types of music to, get their heart racing, or to write a chase scene,
Or a
or
battle.
romantic, yeah,
Yeah.
battle, or to put in slow romantic stuff for a love scene to set their mood, their internal mood. Um, I don't listen to music like that to set a mood of what I'm writing. I listen to it to block out the stuff around me. Um, but yeah, that is a thing that I know. I know some people do. I've got a friend, Mark Barnes, and he'll talk about the different soundtracks that he's currently writing to for particular types of scenes, which I find is cool. But I don't know. I think I get distracted trying to feel the emotion of the music
Oh, for sure.
and
Yeah.
write at the same time. It's like two different tracks are running. So it's something that I'm aware of. I don't do myself, but some people do it. It's a thing.
I just think that's so interesting because I had thought about it myself, but I thought maybe that's just a weird thing to think about. But every once in a while I'll do the tavern music, or because we do it for gaming, all the time, and or maybe I'll do a battle music or something like that, or
Yeah,
maybe like what would you listen to while the bard's playing while you're traveling from here to there,
yeah,
stuff like that. But it didn't quite work for me. I think I told you, like, I'm just so used to listening to the radio, or actually, I don't think I told you this. I'm so used to listening to the radio or actual music while reading. I think it's really easy for me writing now. So, like I told you, like I like '90s hits. They're very no offense to anybody. I just feel like I've heard them so many times. Being a 1987 baby, that it's what I grew up
it's
listening
background
to.
noise
Yeah,
for
it's
you. Yeah,
background noise at this point, and I
yeah,
like it. And it actually takes speaking, and maybe it is a little bit of the emotion writing music, and it takes me back to a happier time, makes me happier when I'm writing. Sometimes it will instill something in me that, emotion that, I do go through my writing and maybe try to convey. So I actually never considered that. So maybe that's my emotional writing music right
maybe.
there, is the
Yeah,
90s.
yeah. Why not?
Yeah, that's funny.
You could set yourself up playlists for different types of emotion that you
Yeah, yeah,
want.
yeah. I
Yeah,
actually think I'm gonna try it because Jed Hearn's always talking on Wizards, Words, and Words, and it's like you really never know until you try a tool. So maybe that, oh, you never know. Maybe that could be my thing. Maybe that gets me
yeah.
to, finish this editing and then busting out a bunch of novels right in a row. So it's worth
Sounds
a
good.
shot, right? And you actually gave me a really good idea too, for a later episode for us, going over the fantasy name generator, and going over that tool a little bit. Speaking of a tool or something that distracts me all the time, I'll be like,
Yeah,
oh, I'm just gonna get this one name, and then I'm like, I collect 20,000 names for novels that I'll probably never get a chance to write, but it's probably good at some point if I take my internet off and just
yeah.
start typing. But yeah, I think that'd be kind of a interesting episode.
Yeah, I do take a bit of a shortcut these days myself with that. I will go to the fantasy generator thing,
It's really good.
have it
Yeah.
pull up stuff, and then I'll just take something that I like the look of, but rework it for myself
Yeah, yeah,
for
that's what
how
I've been
I would.
doing.
Yeah, so that does help a lot.
I really
rather
like
than
their
just
items,
yeah.
list, magic items list. It'll have like a really weird name. Um, and then I'll just take part of it and then yeah, just do the same thing. And I was like, oh man, that is like really good. And I've
I'll
gotten a
have to
lot
look
of
at those.
ideas
I
that way.
haven't looked at that. Yeah.
Oh, it's really good. Yeah, we'll have to try at some point when we're talking and I'll show you. Like it was really, really cool. Like their places I'm not really into. I like their
Mhm.
people. I like to mash them, but yeah, their
Yeah.
magical items, like you just lop a couple parts off, put them together, and all of a sudden you have like this legendary weapon that everybody will want to call,
Yeah.
that name for all time. I just
Cool.
was like, wow. I was like, this is like Excalibur type stuff.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, I highly
And
recommend
that
it
can
to
be
you and
difficult
anybody
at
else
times.
listen.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm like, I'll just go in. I have like a whole, actually, part of this book is literally just those. Like, I just went in and started writing one day, and I was like,
Yeah.
well, I got weapon names from now to eternity. So,
Yeah, yeah.
all right. Well, we're gonna wrap up here for episode 3 here with Mark. And Mark, if there's anything else, like I said, we'll have the other 2 episodes up before this on YouTube. My friend and I are meeting on Sunday to hammer out whatever I'm doing wrong for Spotify. So by the time you guys listen to this, the Spotify will be up. I know I've said that for the last 3 episodes, but even we're way far in advance, so it'll definitely be up by the time you guys see this. We're about a month out right now, at least. So um,
Excellent.
so I want you guys to make sure, you guys go check out Mark's website in the description. I actually already have the link set aside for Mark's book, Blood of the Spear. Mark, if there's anything else, you want me to share with people or any other links, Instagram, things like that, just let me know. And I
Sure.
will put those up in the description now that we've got all 3 of your episodes done. And then we will put those in for people. That way they can go and give you some nice foot traffic and buy some
Excellent.
books. All right, guys. So we're going to sign off here. We want to thank you guys for tuning in to the Fantasy and Sci-Fi Fanatics podcast. Again, you can find this video, Mark's 2 other videos with us on YouTube, Twitter, also on our Facebook. We got a group going where you can actually join us and actually talk to our authors. Some of them are in there already and join that group, ask different questions, things like that. Again, by the time this is up, you guys will be able to listen to this audio on Spotify, which we're really excited about. Also, feel free to reach us at Scholars of Uma, that's UMA at gmail.com. Let us know what you would like to see on our podcast. If you want to see any, future authors, anybody, you really like to read, we'd love to have them on. Anybody else from the fantasy and sci-fi community, just let us know through that email. Send me any videos or pictures that you guys have that are fantasy and sci-fi related. And we really look forward to having you guys on the show. And please come back next time. Mark, thank you so much. And I hope if you want to stick around, I'll chat with you just a little bit still. And everybody else, have a good rest of the night. Thank you for tuning in.
See ya.